Just so you're aware, guys, this isn't going to be a we're not doing the black fibres anymore. I have sent off a Freedom of Information request to Public Health England, and the second I get that back, I'll let you know what they say.
Hi guys, One Angry Chef here. Now, a little bit of a change up from our black fibres today. Getting back to what I want to do on this channel, which is report you the news. Now, guys, vaccine passports, compulsory vaccines. The conversation, how has it changed? Well, many of you may have seen this news article today already from The Independent. It claims to have leaked emails revealing compulsory vaccines for NHS trusts in London. I'm going to read you this article. Link to it is down below if you want to check it out yourselves. I'm going to quickly read you this, and then we're going to have a little quick dive into the history of the vaccines being compulsory and the vaccine passports being used in the UK. Now, I think you'll find it interesting how the media has changed the narrative on this. So let's get straight into it. NHS trusts in London preparing to make COVID vaccinations compulsory for workers, leaked emails reveal. They're going to say a major NHS trust in London is planning to make vaccinations against coronavirus a contractual requirement for all of its staff. According to a leaked email seen by The Independent, that also reveals other trusts may follow suit. The letter to staff at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital Foundation Trust, signed by the Chief Executive Leslie Watts, has not yet been sent to staff but has been shared with dozens of senior NHS bosses across London for them to adapt and use in their trusts. Adding a contractual requirement for a vaccination to employment contracts would constitute a change in terms and conditions for staff and is likely to be legally difficult to enforce. A copy of the letter seen by The Independent said some of the Trust's 6,000 staff had chosen not to be vaccinated, and it urged them to change their mind. It said, "We will not take into account your vaccinated status if your occupational risk assessment, and this may impact the change of duties you undertake and indeed the environment in which you work." The letter went on to say, "We will be making COVID vaccination mandatory for all our employees and it will form part of the employment contract." It was discussed on a telephone call between London NHS chiefs last week. One insider who was on the call said the decision to send the letter has already been made and was confirmed by Leslie Watts herself in the discussion. The source said the Chelsea and Westminster CEO said they are planning to send it and encouraged other trusts to adapt and use the same letter. On Monday, an email including the draft letter was sent to NHS chiefs across the North West London region, including bosses at the London Ambulance Service, Imperial College Healthcare Trust and Hill and Dean Hospitals Trust. It said, "Please find attached the vaccination letter Leslie discussed at the CEO call for you to adapt and use in your trust as needed." Now, there's a copy to the letter here, guys. I do encourage you to go down and read this yourself. I am here to bring you the news as it is reported. So, ban me, YouTube. The move towards mandatory vaccination surprised some on the call due to the likely legal problems the trust will face trying to enforce the rule. In an article examining the implications of mandatory vaccinations of NHS staff, Michael Wright, partner at Hill Dickinson law firm, said, "If an employer tends to make vaccination mandatory, this will amount to a change in terms and conditions. Employers must usually inform and consult with a recognised trade union about major changes in the workplace and changes to employees' terms and conditions regarding to pay, hours of work and holidays. Without agreement, the employer would be faced with either unilateral imposition of the change or terminating and offering re-engagement on the new terms. Both options carry significant legal risks." He also warned NHS trusts could face a challenge under Human Rights Act legislation, or staff could bring a judicial review against the NHS trust due to the lack of consultation. The leaked letter has emerged as the Department of Health and Social Care announced plans to consult on proposals to make vaccination among care home staff a requirement. Under plans, care home companies would be required to ensure only vaccinated staff were deployed to care for vulnerable staff. The Chelsea and Westminster Hospital Foundation Trust and NHS England was approached for comment. Now, as many of you may think after me reading that, well, like that lawyer just said, they can't do this. It's illegal. They can't force you to stay in your home. They can't force you to wear a mask. I haven't got a problem with wearing masks if it makes my life a little bit easier sometimes. Don't always wear one. Sometimes I do, just to make my life a bit easier. The point is, when did we get to the stage where they didn't care for your human right to have your body as your own thing, that you decide what is done to it, what you do with it? They wouldn't make piercings mandatory. They would not make tattoos mandatory. Why vaccinations? Now, of course, there is the argument that, well, if somebody has the vaccine, they're less likely to give somebody coronavirus. Not necessarily true. So for this segment, guys, I've headed over to this website above you now. I'm going to leave that there for the whole of this video so that they don't try and take it down. YouTube, no offense, but come on, I'm just reading public information here, so just hold your horses, yeah? Algorithms. Anyway, we're going to go to the Summary of Modelling of Easing Roadmap Step 2, published on the 31st of March. It's available on the website above, as mentioned. I'm going to skip down here to page 9 if anybody wants to check this out themselves so that you can see that I'm reading it word for word. So, modelling of the whole roadmap. The same 3 academic groups have also modelled the full roadmap, with the assumption that each step of easing will be taken at the earliest possible date. Details of these dates and the changes due to occur at each step can be found in Appendix 1.7 as previously stated. The scale of uncertainty in this and previous modelling means that it would be inadvisable to tie changes to dates without careful consideration of the situation at the time leading up to the proposed relaxation. It remains critical to evaluate the effect of each step before taking the next. In the central analysis of the full roadmap, the 3 groups made assumptions that B.1.1.7 is the dominant strain and other novel variants of concern are not explicitly modelled. Immunity does not wane, neither vaccine nor infection induced. The B.1.351 strain of SARS-CoV-2 is of a particular concern for the UK given the known reduced protection against mild to moderate diseases from some vaccines. There is significant transmission reduction as a result of baseline measures remaining in place after step 4, and there is a moderate seasonal element to transmission, imperial or no seasonal element to transmission other than school holidays. LSHTM and Warwick. The results presented here may be very different and any of these assumptions were changed. Sensitivity analysis have been conducted to consider the impact of less stringent baseline measures, and waning immunity is not included in scenarios presented here. Both are discussed later in this paper. As with previous SPI-M-O modelling of easing restrictions, all scenarios from the 3 groups lead to a distinct third wave. There is significant uncertainty in both the timing and scale of its peak, with results differing between the groups and across the sensitivity analysis. For the central scenarios modelled with significant transmission reduction after step 4, very high uptake and no waning immunity or escape variant, the peaks are estimated to be lower than those seen in January 2021 and likely below those seen in spring 2020. The resurgence is a result of some people, mostly children, being ineligible for vaccination, others choosing not to receive the vaccine, and others being vaccinated but not perfectly protected, including those who have only received 1 dose rather than 2. This means population immunity, which is the reason the waves modelled here start to shrink, is not achieved from vaccination without further infections. The resurgence in both hospitalizations and deaths is dominated by those that have received 2 doses of the vaccine, comprising around 60% and 70% of the wave respectively. This can be attributed to the high levels of uptake in the most at-risk age groups, such that immunisation failures account for more serious illness than unvaccinated individuals. This is discussed further in paragraphs 55 and 56. Guys, I encourage you to go and read this for yourselves. You can see the models. I'm not going to put them up on the screen here because I don't want this to be too long. What I want to get to now is how the conversation has changed around the vaccine passport and around compulsory vaccines here in the UK. So this article you're about to see on the screen up here is from the BBC on the 2nd of July 2020. Coronavirus, how immunity passports could create an antibody elite. I'm not going to read all of this, guys. I'm going to give you the brief rundown of what they're saying so we can move on with this. Governments around the world are testing citizens for coronavirus antibodies to work out whether people have had deadly COVID-19 disease. Some countries are setting up so-called immunity passports and others may follow suit. The idea is that a passport would certify that you have had coronavirus and will not carry or contract the disease again, opening up a way out of lockdown restrictions for the holder. You want to leave your house? You want to go for a beer? Get our new corporate passport here. The idea is But is this theory correct? And will it create a group of antibody-carrying elites who can date, travel and work as they wish, while others are still limited by health precautions? Limited by health precautions? When has health precautions stopped people dating? We wouldn't have a fucking AIDS fucking epidemic if that was the case, would we? God. I'm not going to read any more of this, guys. We're going to go on to the next one, because you need to see how they've changed the conversation. So moving forward, guys, we head to the 11th of September 2020. NHS app set to be used as coronavirus passport after rollout later this month, from the telegraph.co.uk. The NHS contact tracing app will eventually be used as a COVID-19 passport under government plans, as Matt Hancock announced that it will be released to the public later this month. You have to continue reading this article to get it there, but you get where this is going, and we skip forward. Friends here at the BBC, this is the 1st of December 2020. COVID-19, no plans for vaccine passport, Michael Gove. I'll read a bit here. There are no plans to introduce a vaccine passport to give people access to places such as pubs and restaurants once the coronavirus jab becomes available, says Michael Gove. And again to the BBC, COVID-19, how would an NHS vaccine passport app work? The 27th of February. You see how they try and slowly change the narrative from this will never happen to, but if it did, how would it work? They go on to say, as the UK gets closer to easing its coronavirus lockdowns, attention is turned to show how we might safely mix again and what role tech might play. And despite previous denials that a COVID passport app was being considered, it is now on the agenda. Now it's on the agenda. After all the hoo-ha and costs involved in creating the contact tracing apps last year, you might think that a very brave decision. But earlier this week, the Times reported that the facility would be built into the existing NHS app used to access health services in England. It is distinct from the NHS COVID-19 app used by England and Wales to warn people if they might have recently been infected, and fewer people have downloaded it. But according to Google's own figures, it has been installed on more than 1 million Android devices. Apple does not share stats for iOS, which represents a decent start. Officially, Downing Street says the matter is still under review and it does not want to preempt anything by speculating on the subject, but it's clear there would be several benefits. Now, to today. From the BBC today, COVID-19. Vaccine passports could create two-tier society, a quality watchdog warns. Introducing COVID status certificates to help reopen society risks discriminating against some groups, the UK Equality Watchdog has warned. The Equality and Human Rights Commission says certificates to prove who is vaccinated could help to ease restrictions in principle, but they could create a two-tier society whereby only certain groups are able to fully enjoy their rights. Blanket mandatory vaccination policies are likely to be unlawful, it added. The Independent Commission says COVID status certificates, sometimes called COVID passports, could discriminate against marginalised groups where take-up of the vaccine is lower, as well as the small number of people who cannot have the vaccine for medical reasons. Requiring the certificates for travel, going to work, enjoying social activities or accessing essential services could risk further excluding people from some ethnic minority groups, migrants and people from lower socioeconomic groups, the watchdog said. Now, guys, as I just said there, unlawful. Can't do that. That won't happen. We heard the same about compulsory vaccines, and as I've just read you today, the NHS is already mandating its staff in London trusts, or they're considering, to have the vaccine. Now, a big change seems to be happening in the way we do things in this country. Passports are being trialled. They're already being trialled at major sporting events in this country. We have stories like this coming out of Israel. And from Germany, we have this. From pharmaforum.com, link down below, IBM-led group wins German contract for digital vaccine passport. Germany has awarded a tender to a consortium led by IBM to develop a secure app that will provide a digital version of the country's paper vaccine certificates. The €2.7 million contract covers the app and a back-end system back-end system to allow for integration with IT systems operating in medical practices and vaccination centres, according to details published in the official journal of the EU. So the history of medical and alternative passports is kind of a broad one, whether it was Hitler's Jewish passport that was issued, or things like the ones that were issued to Carte Jaune, for instance, for yellow fever. Now, there's a lot of arguments and controversy around this. The ethical concerns about immunity certificates have been raised. Human rights, we have a body that is ours, we are born into it, and our human right is for us to decide what is done with that. Now, we risk, by mandating vaccine passports and therefore forcing people to take a vaccine to contribute in society, people will not be making informed choices, they will be making forced choices. They will feel like, to keep up with societal pressure, they must take this vaccine. Now, for instance, me, on a personal level, I've had operations before on my lung for pneumothoraxes, and you might say that might make me want to take the vaccine more. Well, on the contrary, if this vaccine caused me some sort of pneumonia or some other response, which has been known as documented evidence of this, my lung might not survive. I've been living, breathing in the world fine so far, and I haven't had a problem. You see where this is going. Immunity passports is a different matter. Now, a passport saying that you have immunity would say that you've had the vaccination, which doesn't even bring immunity. I will link the Pfizer websites, Moderna websites, AstraZeneca websites, Johnson & Johnson websites. You name it, I'll link them down below as proof that it doesn't bring you immunity. But an immunity passport is a different matter. So you could become immune after having already had the virus. The fear there is people will go out and try and contract COVID-19 just to get an immunity passport. You see the problem that we have there. Now, this is from Wikipedia. I'm going to read this bit here, and you'll see. Ethical concerns about immunity certificates have been raised by organisations including human rights. According to the human rights organisations, requiring immunity certificates for work or travel could force people into taking tests or risk losing their jobs, create a perverse incentive for people to intentionally infect themselves to acquire immunity certificates, and risk creating a black market of forged or otherwise falsified immunity certificates. By restricting social, civic and economic activities, immunity passports may compound existing gender, race, ethnicity and national inequities. On the other side, it is argued that it would be disproportionate to deprive immune persons who can neither infect themselves nor others or their basic freedoms. This general prevention would only be justified as ultimate ratio. Accordingly, Govid Punswad and Ezekiel J. Emanuel stressed that an immunity passport would follow the principles of the least restrictive alternative and could even benefit society. Now, what we've got to bear in mind, guys, is the tests aren't always accurate. Let's just say you're forced to not be able to go somewhere and do something because of a result that's wrong. Doesn't really sound very fair. This could be the last grab. With social media being our main form of communication, and with censorship, that's freedom of speech. One of your human rights is being taken away every single day, slowly but surely. The right to travel, the right to gather, the right to socialise, that's been taken away. We've handed that one over. Most things that were once considered God-given and holy and ours to keep have slowly been taken from us. A lot of it under the guise of safety and COVID-19. Now, the last thing, there is no real monopoly on. Oh, there's monopolies on it, but there's no real ownership of these corporations and government bodies. Is our bodies ourselves. I fear that by allowing these passports to become reality in our country as they are in other places around the world, we are giving away one of our most sacred rights, our sacred right to decide what we do with our body. Now, I'm just an angry chef, and that's just my opinion, but the conversation's ongoing, guys. Let's not shy away from it. Let's make our voices heard. If you have something to say that you don't want to put out there yourself, send it in. But guys, open the dialogue with people around you. Make them realise what it could lead to. We have enough division in this country. We have enough social economic problems that need addressing before we introduce another way of separating society into who is considered better under some imaginary credit scoring system. It's a dark road. In China, we have social credit scoring systems already. Guys, have a think about your freedoms. Because an old saying is that those who sacrifice freedom for safety deserve neither. And I think it's one of the truest things ever said. If you are willing to give up your human rights for a feeling of safety, I'll leave it there. I'm one angry chef. I'm going to be spending the next couple of days spending some time with my family. Daughter's birthday tomorrow. I need a little bit of a break. If any breaking news stories happen in between, I'll stay up late and I'll get some videos done. Until then, I'm an angry chef. Stay in peace.